A panel of high-profile journalists have come up with a list of the 50 wise ones in our midst. Francis Bula, Michael Harris, Gary Mason, and Vaughn Palmer are the contributors to this year's Power 50 list. Gary Stephen Ross. Gary Ross is a journalist, writer, and the Wisely editor-in-chief of Van Magazine, or should I say the wisest. He has kept the Power 50 list a secret until now. It is my pleasure to welcome Gary Ross back to Studio 4 to tell us more. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, how does this begin, the Power 50 process?
Every year, we've been doing this for 11 years now. We have informal meetings. We invite members of the city, different aspects, people with expertise in different areas of the city to come together. We have dinner. We sit around. We get them drunk. We assure them this helps.
Then nobody makes sense.
That's right. We assure them it's off the record. And we ask what they think, excuse me, about so-and-so. How is so-and-so performing? Are they succeeding? Are they failing? Are they richer? Are they smarter? Are they more powerful? Are they less powerful? And gradually kind of sift out who should be on the list.
And do you give them the names, or do they come up with the names?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
So, for instance, can we say who's number one, or is that still a secret?
I think today we can say who's number one.
We can say who's number one. Let's start with what it's about first.
Well, the idea, every year there's a theme to the Power 50, and so we give kind of bonus points. So one year it was the big idea, ideas that began in Vancouver that have traveled widely.
Right, philanthropy one year.
That's right.
I know because I emceed the event a few times.
Absolutely, and it's not going to be the same without you, by the way.
Well, I hope someone shows up if I'm not there.
I think we almost closed it, Fanny.
I think you're okay.
The deal's on. Anyway, so the theme this year is wisdom.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me, a year in which wisdom is much needed. I mean, I'm sure the world has always been in flux and a perilous place and whatnot, but starting with the Arab Spring in the Middle East, the seeming dissolution of the European Union or the failure of the euro, the whole economic shift from west to east that we're seeing these days.
The Berlusconis.
Lots going on.
Lots going on. So how do you define wisdom in this context?
Well, we asked everybody we talked to what is wisdom, and we got some consensus about that. I think it's the ability to make judgments based on the past with a clear understanding of future implications. I think you have to add a measure of compassion to the mix. One of the people at our planning dinner, we went around the table and said, who are the wisest people you know? And one of the people, who was a lawyer who had acted for Li Ka-shing, said, Li Ka-shing is the wisest person I know. We said, why? And he said, because most of my clients, he's a litigator, he said, most of my clients say, grab them by the throat and shake them until they're dead, and bury them and dance on their grave. And Li Ka-shing said, I want you to do this in such a way that they walk away with their dignity. I want you to leave something on the table. I want them to feel that they have won as well as we have won. That's a kind of, long-term view, kind of mature
Sounds
way.
trite to say win-win, but that's essentially what it is. But but wise people to me, they know what is right. They have a knowledge of what is true.
I think so.
It's like right action, if you're wise.
Part of it is you've been around for a long time, and
that too. But I've been around a long time, and I'm still not on that list.
I'm getting there.
I did look all the way to 50,
right,
and I'm not there.
You were 51 with a bullet.
Okay, sometimes that happens.
Right.
Right.
Now, Jim Pattison, who is number one on the list this year, 30 years ago, when you said the words Jim Pattison, people would say, oh, right, the car salesman who fires, the worst performing of his guy every month or whatever.
And I believe he did.
Well, maybe he did, but the day has come now when people admire him in the way they admire, a Jack Welch or a Warren Buffett or someone, as someone who has proven himself over the long term, someone who's been very successful, and most importantly, someone who is generous with his time and insight. And, there's a whole generation of young business people and politicians in this city who say, well, what does Jimmy think? Or why don't you find out what Jimmy thinks?
Okay, and he's like the Energizer Bunny. He's in this tower, as you know, and I run into him. He always has time for you. I must say that.
Right.
And he's curious, still curious. He's 80.
Yeah.
I think he's 80.
He's 83 years old.
83 years old,
yeah.
And he's still going and hopping planes and hopping jets and buying things.
And he's been through everything, more than once, more than twice. He's seen it all. He knows probable outcomes. He's able to see things in a larger context than younger people. That's wisdom.
Okay, are there threads that run through these people? I noticed there weren't too many poor people on the list. So they're accomplished,
You know, there's
financially pretty good.
Well, there are different types of wisdom, I think. There's a kind of spiritual wisdom. Yusuf Wask is on the list. He's someone who is sought out for his spiritual insight.
And his philanthropy.
Kim Baird is on the list. She's young. How old is she? The chief of the Tsawwassen First Nation. She's maybe 40 years old,
Right.
and yet has an air about her of having been wise for a long time. So it's not entirely age.
Like an old soul in a younger body.
Well, or someone
Perhaps.
who just has a kind of understanding of the world that, you know, the way some kids can play the violin when they're 7 years old. I mean, there are
Right.
just certain genes or certain gifts that I don't know how you get them, but
Sure.
some people seem to have them. And she draws people to her through her wisdom.
Well, at the end of each one of these small paragraphs in the magazine, you ask people to talk about their worst mistake or their best piece of advice and all of that. And I think Jimmy said, my dad told me, be honest and work hard. There was a lot of that. Be honest, work hard, keep going. David Eby, Civil Liberties, he's on the list. Said, you ask him about his biggest mistakes, and he said something like, holy cow, what mistakes haven't I made?
Right. So the question...
I think Jimmy would say that to you, like,
Absolutely.
not necessarily. Well, yeah, he would. He learns from his mistakes.
Well, that's it.
essentially.
It's not only making the mistakes, it's learning from them and not repeating them,
Yes.
and incorporating that into your view of the world
Sure.
and your understanding of how things work.
And Joseph Wask, a man I admire so much, he said one thing he regrets or something like this, and that was not having written, learned, or loved more.
Right.
Or loved enough. Not
Yeah.
having loved enough, written enough, learned enough, and he's still doing it. Most of these people, and they're not all old, certainly.
Judy Graves is not on the list, you know, the homeless worker,
Oh,
but there
right.
is a profile of her in the magazine. And she has a kind of wisdom which I think comes out of compassion and just an implicit understanding that life involves other people, and your way in life
Right.
ought to involve improving their lot in life.
Our Lady of
there's-
Perpetual Help, you call her.
That's
and
what
she
we
is.
did
Tell
call
me
her.
about her a little bit.
Well, I mean, she's a fascinating woman. You know, she did the head counts in the downtown east side after midnight to figure out how many homeless people we actually had. She got to know many of them, and you know, she's taken it upon herself to, one at a time, get them set up in a room of their own. It is a trickier process than you might imagine.
Of
You say
course.
to someone who is buzzed out or has addiction issues or mental health issues, be at a meeting at 60 West Pender at 9 o'clock next Thursday, and they say, well, you know, what's today, and where's 60 West Pender,
Right.
and I don't have a social insurance number, and where do I begin? She takes them sort of through the stages one at a time, and ends up finding housing for them. And often they are transformed. She says within weeks sometimes she'll see them walking down the street and not recognize them. This has made such a difference in their lives, having a home that's warm to go back to, you know, toiletries and a way of sort of structuring their lives.
Dignity.
Absolutely.
You are what you do, not what you say. It's walk the talk.
And then you have people like Frank Justra, who, you know, is incredibly wealthy through his mining endeavors and so on, but very quietly.
You noticed.
Well,
Yes.
what you don't notice is that, you know, he sits on the Street to Home board, is very concerned about the homelessness issue, and has gone out with Judy Graves at midnight, as people like Gregor Robertson have, and gone through this process and been stunned at the rapport that she's able to create with homeless people, and the positive, concrete results she's able to get through
Right,
this
so he
one-on-one
uses
approach.
his power to make good,
Absolutely.
so to speak. He, I know, does some work with Covenant House, but Juster, you can call him if you're running Covenant House or a street-to-home organization. He'll come down, he'll go in the trenches, he'll go to the food bank, he'll see what's happening, so that the money goes into the right places. And I don't know him that well, but I think he has a very critical eye that way.
I think
like if
so.
he's going to get involved with President Clinton, then he wants to know, what is the foundation, why should I be here, all of that.
Absolutely. Well, when you have lots of wealth, you have no end of people knocking on your door saying, may I have some, please? And you have to have clear ideas of how you want to use your power and influence and money,
Sure.
and how to make sure it's being, you know, effectively deployed.
Right, Julio Montana on the list, HIV/AIDS hero.
Absolutely. I mean, there's someone who has devoted his life, the last 20 years of his life at least, you know, to trying to educate the world about HIV and AIDS. He says that we have the solutions. What we do not have is the political will. So here you have the Harper government, let's say, trying
Right.
to shut down Insight. Here you have the Harper government saying, let's, have mandatory prison sentences for this or that. Let's put more people in jail and so forth. And he's saying this isn't it at all.
Right.
So there's a kind of wisdom in taking on the status quo, I think.
Let's think of another way. Let's think of another way. Like most people who are wise can always go around the corner back again. Think of another way.
Let's talk about David Suzuki for a moment. Here's somebody who for 50 years ago, he was a radical leftist, blah, blah, blah. Well, the things he's been saying for 50 years, and he's high on the list this year.
Number 2, isn't he?
Yes, have become conventional wisdom.
Right.
Everybody
ahead
who
of his
has-
time.
Very much
I mean,
so.
there were other environmentalists who were beating the drum, but he tirelessly beat the drum, and he also didn't sit on the corporate boards.
Right.
Said, "I'm sorry,
Right.
you are not my friend,
Right.
and until you change your ways, you won't be my friend." So
Yeah.
he's feisty.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Who are the wisest people you've met?
In my life?
Yeah.
Oh, men have great ideas, women have great ideas. The wisest. Carol Taylor was wise.
Uh-huh.
Always. She was. I was always willing to call her if I was having any
Right,
kind of tag
right,
day.
right.
I think Carol, well, because she's honest, and she has insight, and she
Perspective.
can make things happen. And she
Yeah.
is on the golden list. I mean, no matter what you say, they say we need somebody to run Walmart. They say Carol Taylor. We
Absolutely.
need somebody to lead the province. Carol Taylor.
They
We
s-
need somebody.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
she's in her shoes. She's solid. All of the above.
I
She's
had a friend
just
in-
smart. And smart
Absolutely.
and wise.
Absolutely. I had a friend in Toronto who, when I was asked who's the wisest person you know, I mentioned this person who's a psychologist. I once went
the
to him
therapist.
and said, what do you think I should do? I'm facing this sort of dilemma. Should I stay in the job I have, and very good job, and perhaps end up being the head honcho one day, or should I take a chance and pursue this book that I'm interested in? And he never answered directly. He was sort of like David Carradine on Kung Fu or something. He told
Right.
you a riddle or a
Right.
story or whatever. We were at a baseball game watching the Yankees hit the balls out of the stadium in batting practice, and he said, nobody ever stole second base, keeping one foot on first. And I thought, thank you for
Taking that to the ballpark.
Absolutely.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Vancouver Magazine Editor-in-Chief Gary Ross. The Power 50 list is out. Wisdom.